Mongolia lies in Central Asia, a vast expanse of forests, mountains, and desert, landlocked between the borders of Russia and China. Much of the country looks today as it did thousands of years ago, when nomadic herdsmen lived off the land. There were few riches to be found in these barren steppes, and warring Mongol tribes battled one another for the only thing they had, land. It took one man to change all that. He was born in Mongolia around 1162. His birth name was Temujin, meaning iron. But as his empire grew larger, he became known as the Universal Ruler, or Ghengis Khan.
Ghengis Khan arises out of a context of warrior tribes. And warrior tribes are essentially based on the same principle that the Romans were, which is either you dominate or you are dominated.
Ghengis understood that principle well. He built a loyal following by generously sharing his horses, his clothing, and his food. Proved his ability as leader by ruthlessly killing those who opposed him. By the age of 40, Ghengis had united warring Mongol tribes into one of the toughest, most ferocious armies ever seen. It ravaged cities, looted treasures, and in the process, built an empire that stretched across the continent of Asia. Ghengis harnessed the natural skills of his nomadic warriors. Mobility was the secret weapon of his invincible army.
They could attack settlements or villages or towns and then flee into the steppelands and not be fearful of being pursued by people who didn't have that kind of mobility.
Ghengis Khan's army traveled swiftly from one area to the next, appearing from nowhere and plundering everything in its path. Not even a lack of basic necessities like food and water slowed them down.
One of the things that they are renowned for was pricking the skin of a horse. Blood would sputter forth, and they would drink up the blood, and that would keep them going.
Ghengis Khan relied upon the extraordinary stamina of his army when he launched his first campaign outside Mongolia. In 1209, he attacked northern China. Ghengis crossed the Gobi Desert, traveling 600 miles with an army of 75,000 men. He conquered the northern province of Shisha, and in 1214 he surrounded the Chinese capital of Zhongdu and starved its inhabitants into submission. They were forced to eat human flesh to survive. A year later, they surrendered.
This is extraordinary. Breaching the Great Wall, driving hundreds of miles into China. There's nothing that convinces a soldier of the power and the legitimacy of a war leader than success. And I think that probably that Chinese campaign did this for Ghengis Khan.
But his power was neither as organized nor as permanent as that of Alexander the Great. He didn't set up administrations or governments. Ghengis and his armies traveled from one territory to the next, plundering, conquering, and moving on.
And as soon as you raid one city and you sack it, then in order to get food for the next campaign, you have to go raid another city. So once you start it, you can't stop.
Ghengis Khan was propelled by two things, necessity and revenge. In 1218, the Persian Shah Muhammad brutally murdered Mongol ambassadors visiting on a trade mission. I was not the instigator of these tribulations, Ghengis is rumored to have said. Grant me the strength to exact vengeance. A year later, he led his army on a vicious crusade through the Persian lands in Central Asia. The strongest of cities fell in just days.
He would come to a city and it would be a very simple choice. The city could surrender and be saved, or if they fought, they would be annihilated.
Ghengis ruthlessly murdered men, women, and even children. He burned buildings, plundered treasuries, and left mile after mile of land in ruins. In some cities, he marched prisoners in front of the army and used them as a buffer to attack the next city.
If the city had a moat, for example, then the civilians would be pushed into that moat in order to fill it up so that the army could come forward. It was quite a vicious form of warfare.
In 1226, Ghengis Khan led one final campaign back into China. It was during that siege that he died of an unknown illness. He was 65 years old. Ghengis Khan's greatest legacy was in building an empire that helped facilitate trade between Europe and the East.
The Mongol Empire provided a safe road for traders and people like Marco Polo to travel to China. And it was the West's first introduction to the wonders of the East.
Ghengis Khan's sons divided his empire and went on to create new dynasties in Russia, India, Iran, and China. As they expanded across Asia, the Mongols battled against the Ottoman Turks, one of the world's richest dynasties.